Turley tea sipping in Tampa. What's up, my dudes? RF, why do you keep doing this, bro? Why? You're just going back and forth and back and forth. You'll start to figure out what you're doing. You'll start to make the tracks more skill gapped and better dirt decals and better jumps and bigger whoops. Then you'll go backwards and you'll make more of an amateur track with these basic, Play-Doh built around a road decals and everything's just so basic and boring. Then you'll go back to making more of an old school, not so built around a road track. I just don't understand what you're doing. It feels like every track you've made this year has been built by a completely different track maker. Every single track feels like that. Like, are you ever going to learn your lessons? Are you ever going to actually progress? Because it just feels like every time it seems like you start to do that, you start to get the tracks back to like an actual full-blown pro level where it's like everybody and their grandmother can't just get around the track with ease, then you'll go backwards. Then it seems like you start making the tracks for everybody. You start making it where, it's like it's catered to everybody regardless of your skill level. It don't matter if you're a beginner, an amateur, if you've had 100 hours in the game or 2,000 hours into the game, you can still get around the track. Why does it feel like you're doing that? Like, these tracks are not supposed to be for everybody. You do realize that, right? Like, a real-life AMA Supercross track is not built for every dirt bike rider to be able to get around it easily. You do understand that, right? It's supposed to be made strictly for the 1 percentile highest skill level players of the game. That's what it's meant for. And this track right here just simply is not that. Now, don't get me wrong. This track would be hella fun if I was an amateur in the game or I was like, just getting into the 250 pro class or something like that. If I was like a 20th place 250 pro guy in the game, yeah, this track would be awesome. It'd be all kinds of fun. But it's not a full-blown pro-level track. And I thought that was the whole point of this shit. But apparently RF doesn't feel that way about it. It just seems to me like RF is trying to do this thing where they're trying to please everybody. It's like they're doing this bizarre thing like a lot of the milestone games do, where it's like, well, we got to make the track for Jimmy over here that plays the game, once a year. We got to make the track where Billy Bob Joe over here that's, an amateur in the game, we got to make it where he can get around the track, bruh. It's not supposed to be an amateur supercross track. It's not supposed to be a future supercross track. It's supposed to be a full-blown AMA replica supercross track. And that just simply is not what this is. Now, you may be looking at the layout of it and some of the jumps and some of the stuff like that. If you don't really understand MX Simulator, it can be very easy to automatically get that thought in your head like, well, Spencer, it looks pretty similar to the real life track. Like, doesn't it seem like you're just complaining a little bit too much or you're being a little bit too hard on RF? It looks pretty accurate, Well, that's when you don't really understand the game. If you say stuff like that when you see this track right here, you don't really understand this game, okay? First of all, it's a video game, okay? So naturally, everything you do in this game is going to just be a certain level of easier than riding a real-life dirt bike. It just is what it is, point blank, period. You are going to have way more confidence in a video game than you are on a real-life supercross track. If you absolutely wad your shit in the whoop section, you're not going to break any bones in a video game, okay? So you can't just directly compare it. You know what I mean? You can't just say, well, if we make the track the same kind of one-to-one scaling as a real-life Supercross track, then it's going to equal being like the same kind of difficulty in the video game as it is in real life. That's not the case. And I feel like that's where RF gets really twisted up, and that's where a lot of you amateur boys get twisted up in this game. You have to simply make the jumps and the whoops and everything about the track. If you don't make it a little bit bigger than what you think it would be in real life, then it's just not going to replicate that same level of difficulty as it is riding on an actual real-life AMA pro level Supercross track. You see what I'm saying? It's like RF is going in here and making this, it's like they're too caught up on making it, you know, like accurate to the bike versus the way the jumps look, instead of just making the track fun. And, you know, for MX Simulator being a video game, they're not making it for that. They're caught up on making it like this exacto one-to-one scaling. It's like somebody came in here and smoothed off all of the jump faces. You know, it just, when you played this game long enough and you've rode on enough of these different pro tracks, you can just instantly tell if a track has the right kind of peak to the jump faces to really give you that kind of skill gap. Look at this right here. I'm jumping clear over the entire dragon's back, bro. That was not intended to be hit on this track right here. And that's the kind of weird stuff you can start doing when RF doesn't make their jump faces peaked out enough. Like, let me just go back and show you a little bit. Look at how low I am to the ground right here. Like, oh my God, RF. I'm barely coming off of the ground, bro. Like, what is that? Just look at this right here. I mean, I'm barely coming off of the ground in the rhythm section. Like, you just got it all twisted up in your head, RF. It's not about making the shit look like real-life Supercross, because this is not exactly real-life Supercross. It's a video game. Do you see what I'm saying? And it's just like, the other thing about it too is this dirt feeling is a lot softer than the kind of dirt feelings you would have had like back in the 2017 days. Like if I would have came through and hit them fifth gear wide open like this and I started getting squirrely, I would have crashed off of the bike back in 2017. But it just doesn't happen on this. That's what I'm trying to tell you boys. Like, it seems like RF doesn't understand this. A lot of the people that are pro racing now, and certainly a lot of the amateurs that race in this game, they don't understand. You can have, you know, this kind of terrain and these kind of jumps and this size of whoops, but it's not the same kind of difficulty because the dirt is softer. It's more loamy. Do you see what I'm saying? And the fact that I can totally mess up on that, that's about as bad as you could possibly mess up in this whoop section. Totally jacked it up. Didn't fall off of the bike. I jumped this little double right here. I case it as bad as you possibly humanly could. And I almost come to a complete stop. And I can still get the speed to hit this Supercross triple. Do you see how there's no like risk versus reward? There's no danger to this track. It doesn't have any of that like, whoa, I'm on an AMA level Supercross track. I got to be careful with what I'm hitting. Or like if I don't hit this certain jump, then it's going to make it to where I don't have the momentum to hit the next jump. Like there's just none of that shit. This feels a lot more like you're playing like one of the milestone games or something like that, where you just, it don't really matter what you do with the throttle. It don't really matter how you lean on the bike. You're going to be able to get through the rhythm sections. Don't really matter if you come up short. You're not really going to pop off the bike. It's all of those kind of things. It just doesn't create that danger and that raw, like what I think of as real life Supercross, where it's like only the best of the best can even get around the track. you know, and if you go in there and you watch like the C-Class 250 dudes trying to practice and qualify on it, they can barely even get around the track. They're just sitting there doubling through the rhythms, they're going around the whoops, they're rolling through the whoops. But that's not how this is right here. Even if you're like an amateur in the game, you should still be able to get around this track pretty easily. Now, I'm not saying you could hit the certain rhythms that I'm hitting, or you could hit the whoops quite as hard as I'm hitting them, but you could still get around this track. You just can. And that right there should go to tell you it's not really a full-blown pro-level track. It's just not. And I don't know if RF is ever going to learn that lesson, but like, it's like, yeah, this track is fun for a minute, you know? It's fun for a minute, but once you start to realize how basic it really is, like, that's when you just start to understand it's more of an amateur vibe track. It's more of a simplistic, you know, amateur track. So, but again, RF seems to be making this shit for everybody. Let's make everybody happy. You know, the entire population of people that are playing the game, regardless if you suck at the game or you're like an amateur or you're, you know, medium skill level. Let's make it for everybody, guys, because that's the point of what we're doing. Like, RF, you're going to have to make a little bit more sense than that, bro. Like, oh my God. And it seems like you start to get that vibe, you know, you'll start to figure out what you're supposed to be doing, but then you'll go right back to doing this. So I don't understand it, but I try to wait and make these track reviews after we've seen the real life race, so that you can actually see the differences and the comparison. And I feel like this sand section right here just didn't really turn out to being like the real life track. There should have been a lot more pre-made put in this sand section. And the sand section actually extended all the way through this corner. Again, RF can't get the proper changes to the track like what the real life track is, because they basically just build a track map track. They build it, you know, entirely like a week before the real life race actually happens. So you can't have the kind of sand section that you want. And meanwhile, this track was actually turned out to be a lot more of a darker dirt vibe. It turned out to be a lot more of a, like a, you know, it was raining in the real life Tampa race. And so it was darker dirt. It was a little bit slicker, a little bit muddier. But again, we don't have any of that shit here. We have this basic, bland, Play-Doh looking, built around a road, you know, softer, sandier, amateur track. It's like, bro, when are some of you boys gonna wake up to this shit? Like, this ain't it, bro. This is not cutting it. In 2023, RF, you know, supposed to be everybody's paying to race. This ain't worth it, bro. It just ain't worth it. Like, yeah, you can say the layout and the rhythms are somewhat similar to the real life track, but like, RF, what are you doing with the dirt decals? Like, I can't figure this out. You know, there's a reason why you have a Play-Doh, you know, decaled version of the track. That's supposed to be for all the people that want to have it super basic looking. You know, that's for all the people that want to be able to see the Erode system better, but that's not what this is right here. Like, even if you go download the highest graphical version of this track, it's still gonna look way more basic than any kind of dirt decal that you would have been seeing back in the 2017 days. That doesn't even make any sense, RF. That's the whole point of you having the Play-Doh versions of the track, so that everybody that wants to have that sort of experience where they sacrifice the graphical look for it to see the Erode system better, that's what the Play-Doh version is for. But that's not what you're doing. Even in your medium graphic version and your high graphic version of the track, it still seems like it is that more so basic, built for Erode, dirt decal kind of vibe to it. But that's not what that should even be made for. You should be making your high resolution version of the track like a full-blown 2017 graphical version. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. Erode has become RF's Big excuse, bro. That's all it is, man. If this would have been back in 2017, you'd have had all kinds of pre-made ruts going through this sand section. The dirt would have actually felt like dirt and not just loamy, softer, where you can come up short on everything. You can just glide over the whoops. You can go through the whoops medium speed and not really crash on them. It's just everything has just been dulled out. Everything has just been oversimplified. It's just, this is like a basic built version of a 2017 track. This is like an amateur futures version of a 2017 track. That's all this is right here. That's all it is, bro. I wish RF could understand it. I wish they could learn it, but it just seems like they're just continuing to do this back and forth and back and forth. I don't know, man. This broken record has just been broken for a while now, dude. It's playing on repeat, you know what I mean?